What's up, Wholesale Nation? Hey, thanks for tuning in. Andy Speed here.
And Andre King.
Hey, just wanted to let you know we've got an exciting show for you today. We've got John Martinez, but before we get started, just wanted to remind you that we do have the Wholesale Nation Facebook group. Go ahead and hop on there. If you like what you hear today, make sure you like and subscribe. Leave us a review. Love to see what you have to say.
Right, and also for those who didn't know it, because we don't mention it much, we do own a wholesale company as well.
Oh, look at there.
Look at there. We also do this business. So Draco Properties, and we also are buying properties. So if you're in the Houston area and you have some properties that you're looking to sell, we are looking for some single family to hold for buying whole. So definitely send properties our way. We're definitely looking to buy at least some. We have a minimum of one per month that we're looking to buy.
One per month, and 4 months from now, we're looking to get up to 3.
Right.
So
definitely excited about that. We've always talked about wholesaling is really great, and that's what we've been good at. But every single person that we've had on that's been a wholesaler for an extended amount of time, they always said, "I wish I would have along that time kept some properties as well." Right. And so that's why we're doing that. Right. We're out here finding the properties. Might as well keep a few for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to make this transition in our business. We've got the funding lined up, got everything squared away. Now it's just a matter of executing. So, yeah, if you're in Houston, you have a property, 3.2s under 2,000 square feet. It's bread and butter. Right. Looking in suburbia, send it our way.
Right. Send it our way. So you can send it directly to us. Go to dracoproperties.com. Check us out on Facebook. You can send it there as well. But first of all, John Martinez, for those, if you don't know John Martinez, shame on you, right? Because, besides maybe Sean Terry, right, who is a great sales trainer in this industry, this is someone that dedicates their entire time to training people on how to do this and how to sell in our industry. Right.
100%.
And so if you hadn't had a chance to check him out, you definitely want to check him out. Most people do know who he is. But today we go through just some of the things that we're faced with in our business. Right. Because like I said, we do have a wholesale business. And because of that, we're faced with things all the time. And so today we just basically go through the struggles and some of the issues that we're having that we've seen with our sales team, especially transitioning from, going belly to belly to buying over the phone.
Yeah. I mean, we've gone through two major transitions.
Right.
That's transitioning from us doing sales or me doing sales to having other people do it. And then that transition was tough enough. Now we're changing to buying over the phone. So we've got another transition that, we talk about both.
Right. So yeah, it's going to be a great show. So if you're looking to learn about, hiring, sales process, how the difference between talking to people, over the phone versus, buying belly to belly, those type of things. This is the show you want to listen to. Again, John Martinez is probably the top in our industry. So it's definitely someone you want to listen to in as far as getting started and learning a sales process. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and get started with John Martinez. Here we go.
What's up, Wholesale Nation? Andy Speed here.
And Andre King.
So we've got a special guest for you today. We've got John Martinez with the Midwest Revenue Group, or REI Sales Academy. Definitely excited to have you, John. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, guys.
Yeah, John. So I think we signed up for your online course,
it's got to be 2 years now.
About 2 years ago. Yeah. And so for us, it definitely made a difference. Like before that, we didn't have a process or anything like that. And so, after that, we had a sales process put together after we went through the program. But that's why we have you on today, right? We're going to go through some of those sales processes and how you got started and all that good stuff. Okay.
Cool.
So an interesting story of how we made the connection. I mean, this real estate, the community is so small. We're in a mastermind with Will Dinker, here in Houston. He's a Houston legend, been around forever. Right. He's one of the original wholesalers of Houston. We're in a mastermind together here, just a private get together, every other week. And he was talking about how he hired you. And I was going through some sales struggles. So I was talking about how my team was struggling. When I transitioned out of sales and we started hiring sales, we struggled. And it's just the training, the holding them accountable. We learned that we didn't like to manage our salespeople because I didn't want to retrain the next one, which was a struggle of ours. But Will was talking about how he brought you in to train his salespeople. And at the time, you weren't a sales trainer, in this industry.
Yeah, in the investment industry. Yes.
So I came back and I shared with Undrea the next day, the story. And I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Will had John, recognized your skill set, brought you in to train your team, and how he shared just how it was revolutionary for his business once you started training them. And then Undrea, I mean, Undrea had heard you on a podcast.
Yeah, I'm a podcast junkie, so I'm on podcast listening. And on one of the episodes, you said, "Hey, I was at I think it was a more of a retail sales training here in Houston, and there was a guy sitting in the back. And it's like, I guess he called you up and maybe saw you later and said, "Hey, I'd like you to come and talk to my sales team." Right. And that's where it all got started. Right. And you said that, you didn't mention the guy, but he had just mentioned that the Will Dinker story. And then I don't know how it happened, but we were having lunch with Will like the next day. And I was like, this is just weird. Like, you just told me this. I just heard this, and we never had lunch with Will. Like we're in a mastermind, but we've never just sat down one-on-one for lunch together as a group. And we're telling him about it. And he's like, yeah, I brought him in, but he doesn't know that you attributed your success in the investment training industry to him, and he doesn't even know this, right? And I thought that was amazing that it's like we're in this little small world, and everyone's walking around in this little circle together.
So how did that happen, John? I mean, that was just
it was real close to what you said, just slightly different. Mm-hmm. So I'm in Springfield, Missouri right now. It's where I live. Okay. And there is a call center here where I live, and they produce leads for investors and retail agents, just anyone looking to sell a house, right? And they were having trouble with their revenue. So they called me in to train their call center staff and their sales staff and rewrite all the scripts and, just typical sales improvement type of stuff. So I did. And they happen to have been calling on Will for years, I think, trying to sell him the leads. And after the training, they had called Will in Houston and said, hey, they went through the new stuff. And Will was like, I don't know what's going on there, but this is completely different. He bought the leads, and he's like, but you got to tell me what's changed. And they said, we brought in this sales trainer. Will said, I want to meet him. So I called Will up. And he's like, would you come down to Houston to train my team? And I started asking what he did for a living. And I had no idea what wholesaling or the whole REI space even was. Like, it was just, my experience with that was probably the same as most people. I saw like the billboards on the side of the road, or the bandit signs. I didn't even know they were called bandit signs. I said, yeah. So I drove down, spent some time with Will's team. Will is part of another mastermind, Collective Genius. And after I spent time with him, he kind of told others in CG what he was doing with me. And when I started, I think we had been in training sales teams in about 4 dozen industries. And within 6 months of meeting Will, REI took over our business. There was such a massive demand that's all we started doing. And over the next 6 to 12 months, we actually ended up firing our clients in every other industry just to focus on the real estate stuff. So, wow. Without Will, I never would be in this industry at all. I'd still be just kind of doing my thing, in tons of different industries.
Right. That's awesome. So we're eternally grateful for that transition, because you've
Me too.
When we first bought the sales training, and it was because I suck as a sales trainer. Like I can sell, but I didn't know how I did it. And I still really, aside from just pulling from yours and kind of labeling what you've already done, I really don't know what I did. But we took a mediocre salesperson that really dove in deep and could essentially regurgitate your training. He dove in. Like, it was incredible how he dove in. Right. He was mediocre at best.
He became Little John.
And it made him, a great salesperson for a time, until he thought he was the best salesperson on the planet and he didn't need to learn anymore.
Things changed.
Or go on appointments.
Right.
But, it was a phenomenal transition in him. And, it does attest to the training that it does work. Mm-hmm. And definitely we thank you for that.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And so before we get into the meat potatoes, a lot of people want to know, how people got started. And so for you, so how did your journey get started in the sales training industry?
Yeah. So I think it's like probably most investors started, right? You go through your early life, you take the normal jobs, which are low level jobs at first, whether some go to college, some don't. I was right in the middle. I went to college, dropped out. And I finally made my way, first I started selling insurance for all commission, and got into some better roles, had my own insurance agency, then kind of got into the corporate side of corporate America, I guess, IT stuff and infrastructure, and started getting into some really high-end products, expensive things, and really just climbed the ladder for about 10 or so years until I was, building big sales organizations, marketing organizations, and managing all of that. And then it finally got to a day where I just I didn't like what I was doing. It wasn't fun. I was, corporate America is not that awesome, right? I was doing really well by those standards, right? Working for someone else, but I wasn't living the life I wanted. I was working, like 60, 70, 80 hours a week sometimes. And I said, I got to work for myself doing something. And sales training, that portion of what I did was the funnest thing for me. It's what I love to do. So I said, I'm just going to take this little piece of sales training and I'm going to start my own company. So, it took 10 or 15 years to go from when I started selling to just getting fed up with what I was doing and launching a business of my own.
Okay. And at that point, when you were working 68 hours a week, did you already have a family?
Oh, yeah. So, that transition was really tough because you know how it is with the family. You got bills and obligations and commitments and insurance.
Yeah,
right.
All that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it probably would have been easier to do from the beginning because you get so locked in. But at the same time, I think having so many commitments really helped that transition. Even though it was tough, it helped that transition because once you make that commitment, it's do or die. You can't kind of, put one foot in and just kind of halfway do it. You put yourself in a position where, hey, you're going to find a way to make this work one way or the other. And the great people in real estate, I see that parallel, right? The
right.
ones who really do it big, they jump in. They don't go, I'm going to do this part-time for 14 years, then maybe make the leap. There might be a transition, but they make the leap and they put their heart and soul into it.
Yeah, jumping into entrepreneurship with the family is the equivalent of burning the boats for sure.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So
Right.
there is no going back. You got to make this work.
Yeah.
So we want to go into, because I know for our audience, we'd be doing them a disservice if we didn't have the top sales trainer in our industry on here. We didn't ask questions that's going to be able to help them move forward in their business. So we're going to jump into that. So, and we're going to be a little selfish at the same time because we've made some transitions in our business from, buying face to face to going over the phone. So we'll talk about those things as well. But we'll start with, for most people, right now when they first, they're doing it on their own and they're looking to get ready to hire people. Right. And God knows we've had our struggles
100%
on this part, right? On finding the right salespeople. And so that's what we want to start with is that what should, a wholesaler that's looking to branch out, maybe, they're making money now, right? And they want to bring on a salesperson without seeing that drop. What should they look in for what should they look for in a salesperson when hiring?
Yeah, that's one of the toughest things to do for any business, any industry, bar none. I'll tell you what to look for and kind of how to find it. Salespeople there's really two pieces to a salesperson. There's DNA, which is basically, if they're naturally inclined to sell, if they would, they just kind of naturally would be a good salesperson. So it's just kind of how they're built internally. And then there's their skill set, right? It's kind of nature versus nurture, right? Their skill set, it's what skills have you picked up. And the stronger the DNA is, the easier it is for them to pick up the skill sets and implement them. So you're looking for those two things. As far as skill sets go, any of that stuff can be taught, but the most important skill sets to possess is just having a sales process of some kind. And it doesn't have to be mine. It's just have some type of process that they follow. Because whenever you follow a process, you automatically get better. Even if it's the worst process in the world, you do the same thing over and over, you can start to identify like what's working and you start to do more of that, and what's not working and you do less of that. And it's kind of like you were saying, that's typically what happens with business owners. I think you said a few minutes ago, hey, I could sell, but it was hard to teach. And the reason that is because most entrepreneurs, business owners, learn kind of just by they had a process. It might not be documented, but over time they just did more of what worked and less of what didn't without even thinking about it. So when it's time to train someone, it's like, why do I do this? How did this, evolve to and it's hard to explain to someone else. So anyways, there's skill set, and sales process is important. Not being emotionally connected to the deal is really important. It can, emotions run high with salespeople. The other big thing I'd say, skill set wise, would probably be, let me think here, just not presenting too early, just waiting till the very end of the conversation to make your offer. But there's some skill set pieces. The most important is probably the DNA, though. The DNA is you can teach anyone anything, but the DNA is going to tell you whether or not they actually use it. So one of the biggest pieces of DNA is whether or not they want to basically be friends with their prospects. And this is probably the most important thing I can say about hiring salespeople. Common perception is that when we hire salespeople, we want those really outgoing, make friends with anybody, but those aren't actually the best salespeople. And here's the reason why. People who are really outgoing, make friends with everybody, the life of the party, the reason why they're like that is their DNA, the way they're built, is they love for people to feel good. They love for people to have a good time. They want to be liked, really. And that's cool that you make a lot of friends that way, but if you have too much of a need for that, you cannot effectively run through a sales process. And it's just, common sense would tell you that if you just think about these questions, right? If you want your prospect to be happy, are you going to, give them the deal they want or the deal that you need? Well, most outgoing, those types of people are going to bend and break during the negotiation process because they don't want to upset them. They don't want them to be unhappy. They don't want them to get upset at them. And the easiest way to make them like them even more and make them happy is to give them whatever they want. So after these types of people come back from an appointment, you're going to typically hear things like, yeah, I got them. They love us. We really hit it off. What can we do about our offer? How can we raise it? How can we give them more money? And it's this tug of war. Now, those people can make great salespeople, but when you look at the great salespeople across the nation, they only make up about 5% of the best of the best. Right. So while they can do it, it's not likely that they will. So you're not so much looking for that outgoing person. You are kind of looking for more of an introverted type of person. Because what makes an introvert an introvert? Well, they don't like to talk. Well, this is awesome for sales process because they would rather ask a question and step back and let someone else do all the talking.
Right.
And that alone is going to help you get more deals, right? Because the more someone else is talking, you're actually building rapport during that process. The more they're sharing about their situation, the more you're figuring out exactly how to explain your offer and what things you need to talk about and what things you need to stay away from. So I guess the biggest tip just for people who are just starting this journey to scale up and hire in that position is don't go for that really extroverted, make friends with everyone person. You want to go for almost an introverted, business savvy. They don't really care if their prospects like them or not. They know they've got a job to do, and that job is to follow the sales process. That's going to be a better salesperson for you. Now, in order to find, that's really hard to find just by communicating and having an interview.
Right.
So we always recommend psychometric assessments. There's one I recommend, but there's another guy in the industry named Gary Harper, who's really good with hiring and systems and processes. He uses a different psychometric assessment to get to the same place. Now, whatever you do, we always recommend use a psychometric assessment of some kind, because there's personality profiles and communication preferences and those types of assessments. And then there's psychometric assessments. And the difference between the two is personality profiles and communication preference assessments and stuff like that. They kind of tell you, they tell you about somebody. Hey, here's how they like to communicate. Here's the kind of work they like doing. But it doesn't predict what they can and will do. Psychometric assessments, that's the meaning of them, is they will tell you how someone will act if they'll do what you need them to. They predict the future. So look out for those types of things. And one more piece about that, because I see like DISC and all those so prevalent in this industry. The best way I know how to explain those is this: like, you're in a mastermind. I'm in a couple masterminds. If you look around the room, you're in a room or in a group with tons of freaking successful people, right?
Right.
Maybe 20, 50, 100, 150 in some groups. Well, if you look at those people, you're going to look around and notice that there's every single freaking type of communication preference. There's every type of personality. So if you just look around the successful people hey, it's not so much personality or communication preferences that make these people successful. It's something else, right? So that's why I don't really recommend those types of. They'll help a little bit, but they won't predict if someone can and will sell for you.
So that's the
sorry, man,
like,
I kind of took over the podcast and just
no. So that's like the disc you wouldn't recommend. You know, what we've been doing is we've been doing the disc and the objective management to screen.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, that's good. Yeah, because objective management is going to be a psychometric assessment, and then disc's going to help you kind of figure out, do they kind of fit this role? Do they have the personality that fits that role? So if you marry those two things up, you should be in pretty good shape.
Right. Yeah, we got pretty discouraged.
You don't want to do the disc without anything else.
Yeah, we got pretty discouraged on objective management because it said don't even interview anybody.
Yeah, it's like this thing is
like
scrubbing.
Bad one. It's like, dang it.
And then when we went against the odds and said, you know what, I think we know better, we failed.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, objective management group is terrible. I mean, it's effective, but terrible from the perspective of using it, because you got to go into it with the right mindset. Because when we look at data, we know that, you know, the people, now I'm not talking about all people, I'm talking about the people selling today, people with the designation of salesperson in any industry. It's somewhere around 5 to 10% actually should be doing that job, which is why you see so much turnover and salespeople go from job to job to job to job and all that kind of stuff. It's because they're not meant to be salespeople. And so very few percentage of people actually have the DNA I was talking about and the skill set, that combination to make it. So because of that, you do a psychometric assessment. Mm-hmm. Well, hey, if only 5% of the people are cut out for it, or 10%, well, shoot, out of all the people you push through, you're going to get very few people that are actually recommended for that position. And most investors come to that conclusion on their own over time, because they'll go, I hired 10 people and none of them worked out. What the heck is going on here, right? Those types of assessment tell you the same thing. It's just really disheartening when you start pushing people through and you realize that not a lot of people are cut out for what you do.
Right.
But the thing is, it's much better if you know that sooner, rather than hiring a couple people, going 6 months, putting all your blood, sweat, and tears into them, and doing that 3 or 4 cycles through. You can lose 2 years, like, you know, I don't know how many dollars in leads and opportunities,
right,
and almost give up at some point. So it's better to know in the beginning than in the end. Either way, it's not a fun process.
Right. And it's funny you say that, because we've gone through that. You know, we've had a cycle of salespeople that we've brought in, and we've had that exact person that you talked about that is friendly and they want to make it happen, and that person's no longer here. And we have a deal right now where I talked to my disposition agent, and she said that the last thing that salesperson told him was, I don't know if this deal is going to work out, but I just wanted to help the seller. Right. But at the end of the day, the best way to help the seller was to get it at the right price so that we could sell it to help the seller. Instead, the seller is going to be frustrated because we got to go back and renegotiate because our way of helping the seller was to give them the price that they wanted. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you got to think of an acquisition agent like a doctor, right? Mm-hmm. A doctor tells you what you need to hear, not always what you want to hear, right? Like, hey, you can't eat the sweets anymore. Hey, you got to cut out some of the fat. Hey, you probably need to exercise. Now, doctors do that with confidence, right? Because they know that's what's best for you. They don't care whether you want to hear it or not. They're giving, that's how they help you the best. And the acquisition agent or an investor is the exact same. You've got to be willing to make the best recommendation, knowing that it's not always going to be fun and it might be met with some resistance, but that's how you truly help people.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, you know, as far as our hiring, I think we've made some changes now, right? And we're seeing I think we've seen some improvement. And of course, we've changed our sales process now over the last, not sales process, but we changed the way that we buy properties over the last couple of months. And so we've moved to, and I know a lot of people, you know, once they bring on salespeople, now they're starting moving into buying over the phone. Yeah. Right. And so one of the things we've noticed is the rapport building is a little bit different, and people are having issues trusting us. Even if we get them to the contract, they're having issues now signing, even though they were ready to sign. They're looking at the contract more thoroughly versus when we were belly to belly, people didn't even read the contracts. Right. And so moving into that, to buying over the phone, one of the parts of building rapport is body language. And now we're missing that. So what would you say to that salesperson that's now looking to start buying over the phone? What should they be doing differently in their sales process, if anything?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. You don't just like start looking out the window and tuning out or checking email or whatever, right? So rapport is definitely tougher. And then you can't see each other. You can't read each other. It's tough. So you do a couple of things a little bit differently. I would say, you follow them. Our clients, I'd say 30, maybe 35% now are buying over the phone.
Right.
Maybe not 100%, but at least a portion of their deals are buying over the phone. They all use the same sales process, but they take a lot more time and energy to build rapport. So a couple of things there. Number one is you can't waste too much time at the beginning building rapport. People kind of want to get to it a little bit quicker. So you have to constantly focus on building rapport through every portion of the sales call. You really just have to do everything better, right? You have to set the stage, set expectations for what's going to happen better. You've got to do it more often. You got to set expectations and then actually deliver on those expectations over and over and over again to build that trust and rapport. You got to get them talking even more, which is harder to do over the phone. So your questions have to be better. They have to be a little bit more thoughtful and engaging than face-to-face. So you do the same thing. You just got to be a heck of a lot better at it.
Right.
We recommend over the phone if you're going into another market. We recommend over the phone if you're getting really good at lead production and it just doesn't make, you can't reach them all face to face. And we recommend over the phone, even if you do go belly to belly, but there's some people where you can't get in front of them quick enough or can't get in front of them at all, then it makes sense to do over the phone. So over the phone is absolutely awesome. And there's plenty of applications for it. Bottom line though, your conversion rate will go down. And lots of times your margins will be a little bit smaller. It's just the nature of the beast.
Right.
But if you're going to lock that deal up versus not locking it up, then then over the phone, absolutely. Does that make sense, guys?
Right.
Yeah. 100%.
And so at the beginning part, you said the rapport, you want to push it back a little bit. You don't want to go too hard too soon. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, let's just think if we get a random call on the phone, at least for me, last 2 days, I've gotten over 20 freaking random spam calls, right? And every once in a while I get them because they spoof me and it looks like a local number and they're like, oh, you got me. But if they do get me on the phone, I am immediately thinking, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Let's get to it, right? That's how people on the phone are, right? That's how we all are. So when you're buying over the phone, the natural tendency of the person on the other end of the phone is going to be, don't waste my time, let's get down to business. So that means instead of, if you're belly to belly, you're touring a house, you might have 10, 20, 30 minutes of walking the property and building rapport. On the phone, you don't usually have that luxury, right? You can do a virtual walkthrough and, tell you about this and that and all that kind of stuff, but it's really an expedited process.
Right.
So you've kind of got to, belly to belly, you can do most of the rapport building up front, I guess is what I'm saying. Over the phone, you can do a little up front, but it's always got to be top of mind, and any opportunity you get to build rapport all the way through the sales process, you got to try to do.
Right.
Does that answer the question?
So what you're saying, what I'm hearing is you just have to be a better listener when you're buying over the phone, because I would assume if, we're going belly to belly, we're doing things like seeing pictures and things like that throughout the house. Yeah. So that's kind of giving us something to say. And then of course we're looking at the house. It gives us stuff to say to the person to build rapport. But over the phone, that's what I've noticed is that you have to really listen. And that's where our salespeople, when we first brought them on and started doing this, because this was a major transition for us, is that they were treating this like a transaction, right? And and they were going on script, right? So they're going through the script, but the only thing that the script was missing was building the rapport. Right. Yeah. And I saw that in a lot of scripts. I pulled up script after script, and each script was starting with the beginning, let them know who you are, and then explain, what you're wanting. And then you just go from there. Tell me about the house and things like that. But then they started getting transactional. Okay. Tell me how many bedrooms. And they're asking questions that don't make a lot of sense. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Right?
We even actually, we listen to our calls and we tell them, you don't show up to the Super Bowl and you don't practice, right? So I've been doing this for 5 years, and I still listen to every call that I make, and I'm critiquing myself, seeing if I missed anything, making sure that I'm attentive to what they're saying and not necessarily just thinking about the next thing to say. And we found them. They were, we would ask them like, hey, why did you ask that? I don't know.
Right.
It's like, well, then if you don't care to know the answer, why are you asking it?
Right.
Yeah.
So
you can't argue. It's easier to build rapport belly to belly. you could think about it. We're not even talking about sales. If you just put two random people from wherever in a room together for long enough, they're going to start talking and get to know each other, right? That's the power of proximity is even out of a sales environment, you put two people together enough, like talking about the gym, you run into the same people every day. What do? You start talking, right? You're sharing an Uber with someone. What do? You eventually start talking to the Uber driver or who you're sharing it. It just happens naturally. That's not natural on the phone, so you got to put a lot of effort into it.
Right. I think we're getting better at that part, right? Being able to buy with the phone and build rapport, things like that. But we're still, I think our main failure now has been at the contract. All right. Do you have anything for sales teams when they get to the contract, once the person has said a yes, to get that person to sign without, bringing in attorneys and things like that? That's where we're seeing some issues.
I mean, what you do is when you recognize you have that problem, it could come from two different areas. One is that you rush through the sales process and you miss some stuff. And until that stuff's resolved, you're not going forward. So things that they might be uncomfortable about, things they haven't figured out on their end, just the logistical part. How's the move going to go down? Where am I going to go? That type of stuff. People who have other opinions, who might kind of be tugging at them going, hey, consider this other option or this, or I think you should or shouldn't do this or that. So you want to address those up front. And if you're following a good sales process, you will. But let's say you do all that stuff. You still had that happen, that scenario happen where it kind of fizzles out when they're supposed to sign. Mm-hmm. So if you see that happening, the best thing you can do is know it's going to happen, predict it's going to happen, and actually set that expectation with the seller and say, hey, listen, here's typically what happens at this point. I know everything sounds good now, but I'll send you an agreement, and even though it's short and it's standardized in the real estate field, it's probably going to be an agreement you've never seen before. So you're going to have a ton more questions, and if those questions aren't answered, like any normal person, you're going to put the brakes on and pause until you figure things out. So let's do this. I'll send you the agreement, and whether we do it now or later, whenever, we'll get on the phone together. In real time, I'll send you the agreement. I'm just going to hit all the high-level stuff that people typically have questions over. It doesn't take more than a few minutes. So I'll nail all that stuff down with you. If you have any questions, then right there, you can ask me. And that way, you know what you need. And this, if it works for you, it works. If not, it doesn't. But at least you won't have any questions about the agreement, because that stuff sometimes, even if you want to sell and we agree on all the terms and everything like that, that can slow things down. And I get it. It's natural. So you take that and you make that part of your sales process, right? So that's a deal killer in our terminology. So you want to take that deal killer and address it as soon as possible. So that's how we would handle it. Sometimes you might have to hold a little leverage back. So you can sweeten it. You go and you can bribe them any way you want to. It's an ethical bribe, right? Hey, if we do this, we know transactions move faster. We know everyone's happier. So, if we can take that extra 10 minutes just to go over the agreement, we're happy to throw in an extra $500 or a gift card for $100 to wherever, because that will increase your closing ratios by so much. It makes a lot of sense, right? So that's how I would handle that situation when buying over the phone, when you think you got it, but then things are fizzling out at that point.
Yes, I think we received 5 verbals in the last 2 days, and only 2 contracts came back. So we're in the process of meeting some of those objections. And one of the ones that came back, I spent 45 minutes on the phone with yesterday, making sure that he was comfortable with and going through the contract, et cetera. But this guy, when we called him, he didn't want to sell. And then a couple of days later, he's made the decision, gone against his family, et cetera. And he wanted to make sure that, that he was doing the right thing, and that, that we were, upfront in our agreement. He saw some stuff about marketing the property, and I told him flat out what we were going to do. But I mean, he respected. I said, either way, we're going into this with the intention to buy an Airbnb in Galveston. We want somewhere to go on the weekends. But, if it doesn't work out, we still want to honor our agreement and, bring somebody else in.
Yeah. Right. And it's I like what you said. So if our listeners didn't hear it, it's how you facing that deal killer. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because our guys are saying it, but they're not setting it up. They're just saying, I tell you what, I'm getting ready to send you the contract. I'm gonna just hang on the phone with you. Right. And go over it with you. And the person at that point is thinking, I can read myself, guy. Right. I know how to read. Right. At that point, how about you just send it to me and I'll look it over, and then, we can go from there. Right. So again, it comes into how well were you setting up that deal killer, so that, the person understands that, you're basically telling them what they're feeling, right? And then they're more comfortable talking to you over the phone at that point, right? And through the contract.
Right. I mean, and the crazy thing is you could just be incredibly honest, right? You just say, hey, we want to serve you. And then bottom line is there's probably going to be terminology and things like that because it's an agreement that you don't know about. And it's our job to fully explain everything to you. So if it was me and I was running the business, I would just, for a couple of reasons, I would just make that policy. Hey, we've got to take 5 minutes to go over this agreement with you because the worst thing in the world that can happen is you sign something when you don't know exactly what you're signing.
Right.
And you're surprised, down the line. You don't want that. We don't want that because that's going to end up unraveling. No one's going to be happy. So let's make sure if you do sign, you know exactly what you're signing. Right? So company policy is probably how I would just put it, because I would, number one, force the acquisition agents not to shy away from it and kind of acquiesce when they get a little pushback. And it would also build additional credibility to the prospect that, like, all right, you don't want me, you don't want to just throw it over to me and have me put my John Hancock on it. You care that I actually know what we're getting into.
Right.
So I think from both perspectives, even though it's a little bit uncomfortable and even though it makes things a little bit more difficult, I think that would drastically increase conversion rates.
Right. Perfect. And so through the years, we've like I said, we've gone from belly to belly now over the phone, right? And we've had salespeople that have come to us and said, kind of like what Andy said, they felt like they were so great that if a person didn't sell to them, they weren't ever going to sell their house. So you might as well just kill the lead, right? Like, this person's never going to sell their property if I didn't buy it. And we know that's not so, because 80% or so of our leads are going to come from the follow-up. So what are you seeing for investors that are doing follow-up the right way? What are you seeing that they're doing differently from everyone else?
Yeah, so everyone else is basically, and this is common, everyone else is basically just following up saying, some version of, well, how about now, right?
Right.
And the reason why that's not effective over the long term is because people will stop answering that question. They'll stop answering the calls, emails, text messages. It's how long, there's no value in that conversation, right? Mm-hmm. At that point, you're almost just you could become a nuisance, right? If you have the same person read, how about now? How about now? You're like, okay, enough. We'll call you if we ever change our mind. So what the best investors are doing are finding ways to add value in the follow-up, which can take a ton of other forms. But the thing to remember is make sure you're doing something that adds value to the seller. Mm-hmm. So you could be looking for referrals and just say, hey, I'm going to call you every once in a while when I'm looking for another property in the area. And if you have even a name or a house that you've seen on the block or around that might need some work that you can tell us, we're happy to give you a Starbucks card. And if we actually buy that car or buy that house, and we're happy to actually give you a referral fee. So always doing that, because you might make them, they might be driving for dollars for you before you know it. Like, you call once a month, hey, you see any houses that look like they need some help? It's like, yeah, actually, there's this one on Elm Street. You need to give them a call. Right. The other thing you're doing right there, beyond potentially finding other deals, is you're staying top of mind. The real message you're saying without saying it is, I'm still out there buying houses. So they know if anything changes, bang, you have that relationship. It's a way of saying, hey, I'm still here buying houses in case you're interested, without actually saying, hey, I'm still here buying houses. Do you want to sell? Right. So there's different things. You got to get creative, but you've got to add value of some sort. And it doesn't even have to be about the house, right? It could be, we used to do in the business to business world, when we were dealing with dollar figures that were 7, 8, and 9 figures, big deals. You would sometimes work them for years. And what we would do to a much bigger extent than what you do in real estate investment is keep what we call a fuzzy file on everyone, right? We would find what they liked, what they're into, if they had kids or not, because we knew we had to stay, top of mind. So, for example, if they had kids between like 5 and 15, every time we came across a local event for families, we would shoot a quick email and say, hey, just wanted to let you know about this. Saw it come through via email or whatever. Thought you and the fam might be interested in it. It's just staying top of mind. So right. To boil it all down, you got to add value with every interaction, or else you become a pest.
Right. And yeah, I can say we've been a pest then over some years. even in our sequences. Yeah, even in our sequences, I would say our sequences are you ready now? Right? Are you ready now? How about now? Right? Is what I would say. Yeah.
But at a minimum, that does increase conversion rates because bare minimum, you are staying top of mind. The only danger you run into is when do they start tuning out? That's what you're trying to combat there.
Right.
No, I love both forms of follow-up. You got to add value, and then there's the fuzzy section. I think I tended to lean towards the fuzzy section. You know, hey, I'm thinking about you. I saw this article, et cetera. I would do a lot of that follow-up just casually. Hey, I'm in Target. I saw some puzzles. I see that you like puzzles. You know, or, got me thinking about you. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. How's the kids? And that's phenomenal. What percentage comes from the follow-up that you're seeing from other investors out there?
Large-scale investors that are doing more than 7 figures a year, we see about 1/3 of the deals coming from follow-up.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. We definitely gotta pump it up. Yeah, but that's great. And so we always ask this last question for all, whether it's investors or anybody that's on. But for you, if you were to go back and tap John on his shoulder and go back and look back, and you could talk to yourself, what would you do differently that with the information you have now?
Yeah, I would take a lot more action a lot quicker. Hands down, there is zero doubt about it. You never are 100% sure about any move that you make, but to take action quickly and big action, you can never lose. So I think like probably people listening to this podcast in all aspects of their life, anything you've done that you've actually got something good out of, probably the first question you ask or the first thing you tell yourself is, dang, I wish I had done that sooner, right?
Right.
And those are my biggest regrets, I'd say. I'm happy with where I'm at, but oh my gosh, everything I should have done a lot sooner. And I should have done it in a bigger way instead of being scared and timid. And it's very cliche, I get it. But the truth of the matter is you don't lose, right? You either goof up pretty big and you learn a big lesson, or you make some progress, but either way, you're growing as a person, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, as a human being. So action is the key to everything. And again, in the masterminds I'm in, I remember when I first joined them and I looked around at these collections of amazing people that I was so impressed by. And I tried to start to put together the puzzle pieces of what makes these people so incredibly successful. After a couple of years, I realized it was the only thing they had in common was they all just took action. And that was it. That's the one denominator across the board. Not opportunity, not what markets they were in, not education level. It was none of that stuff. It was they all took action. So going back, tapping myself on the shoulder, it'd be, hey, whatever you're thinking about, just do it and do it now and do it in a big way.
Okay. And John, I'm going to put you on the spot, but what are you doing with that knowledge moving forward?
Yeah, so we're actually launching a whole bunch of stuff right now. We have been for the last few years, and we fail most of the time, right? We start up a lot of other businesses knowing that a large percentage of them are going to fail, but a small percentage of them don't. And those have been really good for us. So really, I always get scared. I'm kind of a wuss. And I'm always like, is it time? Do I have this? And I start going too far in the future. What if this happens, this happens, this happens? But I kind of squash that inner voice nowadays, and I just do stuff without worrying about, kind of the positive or negative consequences. I just know there's going to be consequences, and either way, we're getting further ahead in the game.
Right.
So, it's always scary, but I can honestly say I take a lot more action now than I ever did in the past.
Right. Everyone we've interviewed, there's been two things that everyone has said, right? It's been one or the other, or it's been both, right? And it's always been take action and get around the right people, right?
Yeah.
Everyone, I think it's been 100%. Everyone that we talked to said take action and get around the right people, or one or the other. Right. And so for those listeners that are out there and you're contemplating, should I do this? Should I put money into marketing? And you're on a job and you want to do something, special for your family or just for yourself. Right. And you have a strong why of wanting to do it. Every single guest we've had on, it's been take action. Right. And so you've heard it again. Right. And so and that's where it's at is take action, get around the right people. Right. So, John, we definitely want to thank you for coming on, for taking the time with us and talking to our listeners. We definitely appreciate it. For our listeners, how do they find you? Because we know that you have some kind of sales training program, things like that. So, but no, you have one of the top in our industry when it comes to sales training, especially in the flipping wholesale investment arena, right? So how do our audience find you?
Yeah, so you can go to, we have a bunch of domain names. They all go to the same website. So REI Sales Academy. If you go there, you'll find our website. The name of our core company is Midwest Revenue Group. So MidwestRev.com. They'll find us. John Martinez Sales Training, like anything like that, you type into Google, we'll fill like the first 4 pages. And on that website, there's we do offer paid programs, but I think we've got somewhere between 100 and 150 free training videos. So there's lots you can see and do on there without ever signing up. And I usually recommend people do all of our free stuff before even considering signing up with us, because then they know exactly what they're getting. Right. They'll know whether that worked for them or not. So I recommend go check out all the free videos and training on the website. We've got a YouTube channel. I think it's called Midwest Revenue Group. Same thing. We house all those videos everywhere we can. But that's what I recommend people check out if they have any interest.
All right, perfect. So you heard it. Check it out there, and we'll put that in the show notes for anyone that missed that. But again, John, we want to thank you for gracing us with your time today. Any last word from you, Andy?
No, I want to thank you. It's you've put together phenomenal training, and it's helped a lot of people. Our guys. I was interviewing a guy that actually just started working for us. That he was trying to do this on his own, and he was getting like 1 appointment a week. It's like, man, you come work for us, you're going to get 2 years worth of experience in their first 2 months. And then you've also put it out there for people to learn from your experience. And that's phenomenal. We learned the hard way. I learned the hard way. It was trial and error, and it was, hard-earned dollars that were going out the window. So appreciate you putting that out there and giving people the ability to learn from your experience.
Well, hey guys, thanks for letting me share today. I appreciate it.
All right, Wholesale Nation, that's it for today's show. We want to thank you for listening. Thank John for coming on. But that's it. All right, y'all come back now. You hear?